All right, lesson 4. How much time do I got? 7 minutes. Okay. So, David's afraid of the ark of God, the presence of the Lord. He says, hey, who lives nearby? There's a house over there. Some random house. Let's drop God off there. So it's Edom Obed. Let's take the ark to him. Drops him off. And we read in verse 14, the ark of God remained with the family of Obed-Edom in his house for 3 months, and the Lord blessed his household and everything he had. So Edom Obed, his whole family, the wife, the kids, everyone's being blessed because of the presence of God. So lesson 4, wherever you find Jesus, you will find his blessing. So I want you to come back with me. We're done in 1 Chronicles 13. You have your ribbon in 2 Samuel 6. I want you to come back with me to Genesis 39. Genesis chapter 39. And I want to give you an illustration of the blessing of God when Jesus is with you. Genesis 39. It's the story of Joseph. Joseph's one of the 12 sons of Jacob. His brothers don't like him. They sell him off as a slave to Egypt. Chapter 39 of Genesis, verse 1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. So he buys him as a slave. Verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, just as the Lord is with each of you. If you've given your heart to Jesus Christ and invited Jesus into your heart, you have him enthroned upon your soul. Verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Now this is interesting. The Potiphar is not a believer. He doesn't worship the God we worship, but he sees that God is with him. How does he know that? How does he see that? It's because whatever Joseph does, he's successful. He's prosperous. Potiphar's like, this isn't from a human. Obviously, God has his hand on this person. So, let's see here. Verse 4, Joseph found favor in the eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of who? Of the Egyptian, because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So isn't this interesting? Potiphar hires a Christian, a believer. And not only does Potiphar see the blessing on Joseph's life, but when Potiphar hands over the responsibility of his household to Joseph, everything Potiphar has is being blessed now. Listen, for you that are still working, if a company hires you, it should be an amazing blessing to that company. It really should be. You're bringing the presence of Jesus Christ into your company, into your job. And of course, Jesus is going to bless you personally so that your coworkers and your bosses go, hey, what is it that this guy has? How come life is going so well for him? How come things are working out? How come he has such keen insight into this job and this situation? There must be God. You're lifting Jesus. You're carrying Jesus on your shoulder as you're going into the steel mill and teaching and the hospitals. And people are saying, what is it? But the company that hired you suddenly is being blessed and you're moving up. Joseph's moving up. The company that hired you is being blessed because you're there with the presence of Jesus in that company. Now, sometimes you go down before you go up. So you know Potiphar's wife goes after Joseph, She claims, he took advantage of her. Joseph gets thrown into jail. So you go down before you go up. So Joseph's in prison, verse 21. So in verse 20, he's in prison. Then 21, the Lord was with him. So even when he has the worst job in the world, he got fired. He's now working, he's the janitor. But you see, God was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison. Verse 23, the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And of course, the rest of the story is Joseph winds up second command over all of Egypt. Sometimes you go down. Sometimes you get fired. Sometimes you get demoted. Sometimes you lose your job. Sometimes situation happens that you think, hey, what's going on here? But the presence of the Lord is with you. And wherever you find Jesus, you're going to find his blessing. And Jesus knows what he's doing. Sometimes you go down in humility before you go up. There was a guy who was a millionaire, atheist millionaire in Philadelphia. True story. Years ago. And this millionaire, a shipment came in to his company. And he called up all his workers and said, hey, a shipment arrived unexpected. Everyone needs to show up on Sunday to unload the shipment. Well, one of his best workers, who this atheist boss knew was a Christian, said to his boss, came in and said, boss, I told you I don't work on Sunday. I'm a believer. It's one of my convictions. I'm not going to work on Sunday. And the boss says, listen, your job's on the line. I know you got those convictions, but the shipment came in and you either work or you're going to get fired. You're going to lose your job. And the guy says, okay, I'm going to lose my job. And he did. He got fired. Sometimes you have to go down before you go up. 2 weeks later, that atheist boss is in a club somewhere when this friend of his, head of a huge banking system in Philadelphia, says, I'm opening up a new branch, but I need someone who is completely honest and trustworthy because he'll be dealing with millions of dollars. And so the atheist boss says, I have the guy for you. And he told him about the guy he fired 2 weeks before. And the banker said, I thought that's the guy you fired. And the atheist said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Because he's a Christian and he stands firm on his convictions. He was willing to be fired instead of dishonoring his God. But I can tell you, he's the guy you can trust with your money. And so the banker hired him, and he had an amazing job and career. Sometimes you go down, but the blessing of the Lord, Jesus is with you.